Thousands of light years from Earth, the message was not intended for humans. Buried between layers of deep space static and foreign encryption, an ancient solitary broken distress signal pulsed dimly over the galaxy. Desperate, it bounced and was never recorded by humanity in any language. For decades, quiet gas giants and the remains of the dead passed across the emptiness. Constellations and the vigilant gaze of societies much older than our own. Itself, but nobody responded until it got to Sol's system's limit. The call was faint and irreparably broken by cosmic radiation and the disregard of moment, but a listening post in the asteroid belt in deep space captured it. An ancient, half-forgotten artifact from Earth's chilly cosmic past, the AI that functioned. Since the array Argus had been operating on its own for years, some people would be bored. Imagine if machines could sense boredom, but Argus was constantly listening. Observing the signal that arrived at 3:42 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated. Something odd happened with Argus. It didn't log, classify, or file anything. Dr. Mara, it sent the signal straight to Earth to a particular mailbox. Ellison, who lived in a small, windowless apartment, had not slept well in 3 weeks. A room deep beneath Geneva's UN Space Command Complex, encircled by flickering data streams. Computers and an artificial coffee haze, her work translates foreign languages, or at least attempt to, although it was usually just static or nonsensical. When the signal first came, the radio echoes and jumbled mess were different. She froze on her screen, her fingers trembling as they lingered over the keyboard. The message had a slight rhythm, almost like speech, but it wasn't any known interstellar dialect, yet it seemed as though something or someone was still alive. She attempted to contact them by running it through the common decryption techniques. Nothing happened even after she passed it through an adaptive neuro-linguistic model meant to decipher foreign languages. She experimented with something unconventional, playing it over speakers and what she. Her blood was icy, and she could hear it screaming, but not loudly. Under the static, there was a chorus of voices that were desperate but disorganized. There were words or at least shapes that resembled pleas and sobbing buried in it. Speech, but there was more suffering, anxiety, and a strong feeling of. The fact that she didn't comprehend the language didn't matter, she grasped the sentiment that the sender was trying to convey. Death might have been a possibility since this signal was dying or, worse, caught in something so horrifying. Fortunately, she noted it and highlighted it for urgent review right away. Hardly had time to recline when her screen went dark and a blood-red triangle appeared as a sign. Within 15 minutes, Mara was dragged with an eye in the center categorized level black. 2 UNC guards led her from her office to an orbiting ship. Her stomach turned when they shattered, but she didn't ask or say anything since she knew better. They brought her through the atmosphere of Earth, leaving behind the azure tranquility of the only house she had ever known. UNC's most potent deep space exploration ship, Vigilance, is shrouded in. Bristling with experimental technology and stealth coding, but this time it. Admiral Rohr stood in the command chamber back there, hunting rather than investigating. He was a relic of the last great war on Earth, with his arms clenched firmly behind him. "We've translated enough of the message to know it's a trap," he said, and mankind realized it wasn't alone. Declared without fanfare, every known civilization wants to entice a ship to those coordinates. You know why the person who received it ignored it? Because, Mara shook her head. She blinked, they're afraid of whatever's out there. So, why are we traveling? At that moment, he looked at her for the first time. She caught a glimpse of something human behind his eyes, but it was not obligation or fear. Fury, since we're not like them and we respond to cries in the dark. Earth disappeared behind the stars as the engines screamed to life. At the galaxy's edge, it opened up like a mouth prepared to swallow them whole. Something old awoke, it had been waiting, but not for extraterrestrials or. The quiet of outer space was never broken by diplomacy, which had been waiting for mankind. Genuinely quiet outside, apart from the regular pulse of a ship's engines and the humming of engines. Life support, there was an additional weight or pressure applied to. Even when nothing was seen, the crew of Alertness sensed it more strongly. Dr. Mara Ellison sat in her observation room as they continued their journey from Seoul. 5 days into the trip, they were gazing out of the reinforced glass panel while stars drifted in the darkness like frozen fireflies. She hadn't slept well, and nobody had called her 5 days before the trip. Experienced dreams that spread like an infestation after waking up one engineer yelling about hands tearing through the walls, while another person said he heard murmurs coming from the water pipes despite. The crew was occupied with drills because the spacecraft lacked liquid plumbing. Patrols and system checks, but even he was unable to stop their thoughts from straying. Humanity had already launched deep space journeys, some of which returned, while others did not. However, this time was different since they were entering a zone where the remainder of the not even pirates dared to venture this far, as the galaxy had been declared as cursed. Mara had tried to decode more of the signal during the majority of the journey, but it was layered. Every time she removed a piece, more bewilderment emerged from what appeared to. It wasn't just a message, it was like data that abruptly transformed into sound, like language that transformed into feeling. Living, changing and adapting while observing her, and then the oddity emerged. As if someone had dragged a brush of darkness across the cosmos without any light, there was suddenly a black smudge across the stars. Was not on any map or sorted, and no data was reflected back. Ship to approach cautiously and slowly, and as they got near, it became obvious that wasn't a natural emptiness, rather, it was a gigantic, manufactured space station. Dead silent and wrapped in symbols, ancient people floated inside the anomaly without anyone realized that the signal's origin point was locked in and that it spun slowly as though it was waiting. At the heart of the conference, the Admiral said, "We don't board until we understand what." He folded his arms and stated, "We're dealing with something that might be a weapon or a trap. Even worse, what if someone didn't speak? She might be surprised. Truly needs assistance, and even though his mouth is clenched, we nevertheless